The 3 Feathers. Once upon a time, there lived a king who had 3 sons. 2 of them were sharp and clever, but the third didn't have much to say, and he was considered dim-witted. Everyone called him Dummy. When the king became old and weak, he started worrying about which of his sons should inherit the kingdom. He summoned all 3 of them one day and said, "I want you to go out into the world. Whoever brings back the most splendid carpet will become king after my death." Just to make sure that his sons wouldn't start quarreling with each other, he took them to a place in front of the castle, blew 3 feathers into the air, and said, "Choose a feather and follow its flight." 1 feather flew to the east, the other to the west, and the third flew straight ahead, but didn't go very far before landing on the ground. 1 brother went to the right, the other to the left, and both brothers made fun of Dummy, who was going to have to stay right where the 3rd feather had fallen. Dummy sat down and was feeling miserable. But suddenly he noticed that there was a trap door right next to his feather. He lifted it up, discovered a staircase, and climbed down the stairs. There he found another door, knocked on it, and heard a voice crying out from inside. "Little maiden, green and tiny, hop toad, hop up, greenback shiny, hop right here, land on the floor, quick hop home, who's at the door?" The door opened up, and he saw a big, fat toad sitting there, surrounded by many, many little toads. The large toad asked what he desired, and the boy replied, "I am looking for the world's most beautiful and splendid carpet." The toad cried out to one of the little ones and said, "Little maiden, green and tiny, hop toad, hop up, greenback shiny, hop right here, land on the floor, bring me the box for the boy at the door." The young frog fetched the box, and the big frog opened it up and handed Dummy the carpet that was in it. It was more beautiful and fine than anything that could have been woven by human hands. Dummy thanked the toad and climbed back up the stairs. The 2 other brothers were sure that their younger brother was way too stupid to ever find anything and bring it back. "Why should we even bother going to the trouble of searching around?" they thought, and they snatched some coarse fabric from the first shepherd's wife they ran into and took it home to the king. Around the same time, Dummy arrived home, carrying the beautiful carpet he had received. When the king saw it, he was astonished and said, "If we play by the rules, then my youngest son is entitled to the kingdom." The 2 older brothers were fuming, and they told their father that he could not possibly let Dummy, who was clueless about absolutely everything, become king. They pleaded with him to set a new test. Finally, the father said, "Whoever brings me the most beautiful ring will inherit my kingdom." And he went outside with his sons and blew 3 feathers into the air, and once more the boys were to follow their flight. The 2 oldest boys, as usual, went east and west, but the feather of the youngest flew straight ahead and fell down, right at the trap door in the ground. Dummy walked back down the stairs to the big fat toad and said that he needed to have the most beautiful ring in the world. The toad asked to have the same large box brought in and gave the boy a ring with diamonds that sparkled. It was so beautiful that no goldsmith on earth could possibly have fashioned it. The 2 older brothers thought it was hilarious that Dummy was going off to look for a ring, and they decided they didn't need to make any effort at all. They pulled the nails out of an old carriage ring and brought it to the king. When Dummy showed him the golden ring, the father said once again, "The kingdom belongs to him." But the 2 brothers tortured the king until he finally established a 3rd test, announcing that whoever brought home the most beautiful woman would inherit the kingdom. The king blew the 3 feathers into the air, and they flew in the same directions as before. Dummy went at once to the big fat toad and said, "Now I'm supposed to bring home the most beautiful woman." "Ah," the toad replied, "the most beautiful woman in the world. She doesn't happen to be here right now, but you'll still be able to find her." And with that, the toad gave him a yellow turnip that had been hollowed out and had 6 little mice harnessed up to it. Dummy got worried and asked, "What am I supposed to do with that?" The toad replied, "Just put one of my little toads into the turnip." Dummy chose one of the little toads from the group at random and seated her in the yellow turnip. As soon as she sat down, she turned into a fabulously beautiful young woman, and the turnip was transformed into a coach drawn by the horses that had once been mice. He gave the woman a kiss, drove off at a fast clip with the horses, and returned to see the king. Not much later, the 2 brothers arrived home. They had not taken the trouble to search for beautiful women, but had just picked out the first decent peasant woman they encountered. When the king saw them, he said, "After I die, the kingdom will belong to my youngest son." But the 2 older sons made such a racket that the king almost lost his hearing. "We are not going to allow Dummy to become king." They demanded a new test that would favor the one whose wife could jump through a ring that had been placed in the middle of the hall. They thought, "That will come easily to these peasant women, for they're strong, but that delicate young lady will leap to her death." The king agreed to that test as well. The 2 peasant women jumped, and they made it through the ring, but they were so clumsy that they fell and broke their stout arms and legs. Then the beautiful woman that Dummy had brought home jumped, and she soared through the ring as gracefully as a fawn. From then on, it was useless to try for another challenge. Dummy received the crown, and he ruled with great wisdom for many, many years. The end.